Good morning and welcome to the session Soils in the City. My name is Chantal van Ham. I work with Commonland and I'm also a member of the board of the Nature of Cities. I've always said that if Earth is our mother, then soils must be our father. And actually, soils are vital for our life, but also to make cities more livable, more resilient, and more sustainable. So in this session today, we will explore the importance of urban soils for human health, for biodiversity, for climate adaptation, community well-being, and many more things. And it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker of today, Marc-André Selosse, professor at the National Natural History Museum here in France and of the Institut de France. Welcome.
That's my great pleasure to discuss a bit with you soils. And before going to the city, let's go to soils first. What I would like to tell you is that soils first are living. In 1 gram of soil, which you can take in your hand, there are thousands of species of bacteria, 1,000 species of fungi. There is a tremendous amount of living things which are microscopic for most of them. It's estimated that 60% of species on Earth are living in soil. It's really the place for biodiversity, very close to our home. And this life is attacking the organic matter, the dead leaves, the dead remnants of animals, are attacking the rocks and producing the fertility of soil. But also those living things, they make small holes of roots, holes of bacteria when they go to death, holes made by small mites or worms. And those holes, they are the place where water is stored in soils. 1 square meter of our landscape can store between 40 and 500 liters of water. That's literally water reserves. So that's the general view of soils, okay? My second point is that soil, which are living, soil are just you. Where does your phosphorus come from? Where does your iron come from? Where does your nitrogen come from? If not from soil. So this activity of life in soil is providing food to plants and animals, which you finally eat. So you have an intimate relationship to soil. Whenever you pollute soil, by the way, you may pollute
Chantal,
your own body.
Moderator of your session.
The other thing with soils is the fact that since they store water, they provide you your water. The water you drink, the water in you is coming from soil. And once again, if soils are contaminated, you contaminate yourself by what you drink. So, soils are living, soils are you, your body, your health, but also, most importantly, soils are made of millennia. It's estimated, there are big differences from one soil to another, that each year only 1 millimeter of soil is formed. So to reach a soil that can feed you and that can support the landscape around you, you need centuries, if not millennia. So that's the story of soils. They are living, they are you, and they are made of millennia. Now let's move to the city. The soils in the city, the first thing is that they are dead. To construct a road or a city, you whip out all the surface of the soil, all the place which is rich in organic matter, in remnants of plants and so on, because this is not firm enough. This is not solid enough to support your constructions. So you destroy all the fuel of the life of soil. You take the bottom layer of soil, and then you compact it for it to be more solid and able to carry your constructions, your roads, your trains, etc., etc. Then, it's now very dead, okay? But it's not finished. You cover it. So the soil has no more access to air, which cannot enter anymore to support life and respiration of the living beings. And water, which is one of the big issues for life of soil, is not entering anymore. So if you think of it, technically, but also biologically, the soils of the cities are simply dead. It's very important that they lost every of their ability to be fertile, to store water, and of course, they lose every ability to harbor biodiversity. That's the first thing about soils in the city. They are dead. The second thing is that they are polluted. Very often, when you uncover what remains from a soil in a city, you discover polluted soils because of two things. First, our activities are producing and releasing a lot of heavy metals. And those heavy metals, they go with the run water. They finish by entering once or twice here or there into the soil, which becomes a receptacle for the lead of the cathedral, the zinc of the roofs of Paris, etc., etc. The second source of pollution is oils and aromatic compounds issuing from the cars. Whenever there is a rain and they are splashing water under the cars, it's rinsing the cars. Every hectare of street is producing on average 10 liters per year of complex oily compounds which are often aromatic and very often toxic to the life of soil or toxic to yourself. So very often when you open the soil in the city, you discover that not only, of course, it's dead, but it's polluted. And that's the thing, very bad news. So when I go to soils in the city, they are dead very often and polluted very often as well. But this is the negative side of it. Soils in the city, they also contain hopes. They are sleeping beauties. Sleeping to nearly dead, by the way, but sleeping beauties because they could do a lot for you. The first thing is that if you restore their capacity to store water, you restore a nice way of compensating heavy rains and fighting against flooding. That's very important because especially in Europe, we wait during the climate change for drier summers, but wetter winters and autumns. So more rains during some months, which means there will be flooding. And we have to think our cities as able to soak this water, to drink the water before flooding occurs. For this, we need soil. We need soil which are porous. And remember, the porosity is due to the life in soil. So, to summarize, we need soil to buffer the trend for flooding. Berlin, the city of Berlin, which has some problem with the high level of the Spree River, is thinking itself as a sponge city currently. That is reopening soils to be able to soak excess of water and buffer the risk of flooding. That's the first thing. That's not the only one. If soils are storing water, then you can have plants which will be drinking this water, putting it, elevating it to the leaves and evaporating it as plants are always doing. And it's the same as when you are making your wet clothes, drying, it makes, the evaporation makes some refreshment, some freshness. And that's the big point. In the climate change we will live where we expect more high temperatures in the summer. If we have vegetation, we can have evaporation of water and we can fight against hot spots in the thermic sense of hot, against hot spots in the city. So very often we think of putting trees and so on, but what the hell are trees if there is no soil? We often think of trees that are just popping out of the bitumen or popping out of the concrete. We need to restore vast surface of soils, drinking water, and allowing the trees to survive drought in the summer and to evaporate and create this freshness, this refreshment of the atmosphere in summer. So simply, we have a hope to cope a bit with climate change. It's not a reason to say that we should go on with climate change at all. It means just that for the errors we did, we have, if we have soils and vegetation in the city, we have way to buffer that. The other thing is that if we have soils in the city and plants growing on those soils, we may have additional food. I don't mean here that we will have a food that will feed fully the city. What I mean here is simply that we will have food that will be an additional contribution to our food. It will be a food that can be produced in a funny way, like small shrubs with fruits or small vegetables. And this can even go to the roofs of the buildings. The roofs of buildings, in my view, of a city with soils, are covered if they are flat. Of course, if they are not flat, it's a bit difficult to imagine. Well, it's feasible, but it's another stuff. If they are flat, they can be covered by vegetation and soil, which will be isolating, thermically speaking, the building itself against heat in summer or against freezing in winter. That's an isolating compound, the soil. And the soils, they can be producing some additional food for the people living there. Well, you will tell me that it's a bit in the sun, a roof. Yes, just put solar capturing solar panels to just capture the light and make a bit of shade. So have a layer of solar panel, and under your solar panel, you grow a bit of plants. So my view of the soils in the city are also on the building, and they contribute there to additional feeding. The other thing with soil is the quality of the environment for people living there. There are two functions of soil which are a bit overlooked but directly linked to the health. I don't know if you noticed, but after the rain, there is very often a quite specific smell which is called petrichor. This smell is the smell of soil. When the water is penetrating the soil, the air is expelled, the air from soil is expelled and goes to the atmosphere by giving this specific smell. By the way, it's simply the diluted smell of soil, and the smell of soil is simply the smell of bacteria. The smell of soil is bacteria, and the smell after the rain, the petrichor, is just a kind of diluted smell of soil, so diluted smell of bacteria. Behind this observation, you realize that there are exchanges between soil and atmosphere, which means that whenever there are pollutants on soil, they can go to the atmosphere. That's why in some cities, we have some pesticides from the surrounding regions that are present in the atmosphere because they just go out of soil at each rain. And they go to the atmosphere and they go to your lungs. But if you reverse it, having exchange between the soil and the atmosphere belongs to the atmosphere purifying mechanism. So that's one thing. The more soil I have, the more I have a kind of filter, biologically active, because all the molecules that enter the soil at some point, they are metabolized by the living organism of soil, and the air that is released is free of those molecules. So it's air purification. That's a very overlooked function of soil, which we just discovered now, because we discovered that the pollutant of soil, they go to the atmosphere by way of those exchanges. So we discover it as a nightmare, whereas it's a sleeping beauty for a better atmospheric condition. There's also another issue with the mood. We, as living beings, were selected to live in nature because for generations we were living there. And culturally, we think that we can live in cities. It's biologically false. And the recent paper in the proceedings of the National Academy of Science of America, dating back to the time where there was science in America, showed that every time you are living 350 meters more far from the nearest spot of nature, you increase the risk of nervous breakdown by 5%. So there are social income bias in this story, but there are also good evidence that it's partly because we are meant to see vegetation in our environment. And what if there is no soil? In a way, we have to restore the presence of soil and vegetation in our environment because we are animals selected ever to live in an environment where this is present. And we start now to pile up evidence that for good mental health, having more plants and more nature in the city, so more soils, because all that is just the flowering of soil, the vegetation, is absolutely required. So if you follow me, soil in the city are dead and often polluted. But they are sleeping beauties because many functions can be carried out by those soils. So I'd like to finish by this view of soils in the future of the cities. The soils are having functions, ecosystemic services, we could say, that we need also in the city of tomorrow. We need the soils, and even if you think we need plants, you mean implicitly that we need soils. We need them, and then the question is, can we restore them? That is, can we make more soils, living soils where we have city growing? Partly, yes. We can restore soil, we can bring organic matter, eliminate pollutions, and then restore pieces of soil. But you know what? Do you know the average price of restoration of soil? The scale is 90 to 400 million euros a square kilometer. So for rich city, it's possible to restore a bit of soil. But at large scale, restoration of soil is something very difficult to achieve, financially speaking. So restore, yes. Protect first. Protection is a way not to have to pay that later. And it's very important to have a view of protection of soil. By the way, in France, we currently discuss a law which is the zero net artificialization, which is aiming in 2050 to stop artificialization in France, which grows at the speed of 2 football plays per hour. It's growing very fast, 3.7 faster, 3.7 times faster than the demographic growth of the country. So we have a true problem with that, to preserve the soil, and once again, preserving the soils around the city and in the city, it's a way of not only coping with climate change, but also making a city that it's safer for health to live. Once again, the soil are sleeping beauty. They sleep under our construction. They sleep under our streets. And really, the view I would like to propose you is a view where we marry the city with nature, which means we marry the cities with soils. Soils in roundabouts, soils in parks, soils in streets, soils in roof. What we need is to imagine a chimera of soil and city. And that's something we have to build together with the people living in the cities, which we have also to convince that they are living from soil. I thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much, Marc-André. I think that was really a wonderful story that tells about the many benefits that soils have in cities. And I think if he had more time, he would tell us so much more about the sleeping beauty, about maybe the fairy tale that it is to restore and to conserve soils in these dense urban environments where we all live, for their vital lifeline that they are. So we're going to move on to the next part of the session, and that will be a panel of speakers, and I'm very pleased to invite them here on the stage. First of all, Adrian Wong from SUGi. He is the UK forest lead for their pocket forests. Then Nicolas Griglio, who is the operational director of Urbaine. And Mr. Mete Coban, Deputy Mayor of London for Climate Change and Energy. Thank you and welcome. Yes, it would be really wonderful to hear your perspectives on how you see the value of soil in your day-to-day work in the cities. Yeah. There's microphones. Mhm.
Thank you.
So Adrian,
Sure.
floor is yours.
Thanks, Chantal. Is that working? Can you guys hear? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Chantal. So at SUGi, we transform biodiversity deserts into thriving pocket forests. And we do this by planting trees. But it's not just about planting trees. What we're doing is we're creating micro-ecosystems. Sorry, yeah. And that always starts in the ground, so in the soil, okay? And to give you an idea, this stage here is actually the perfect size for one of our pocket forests. It doesn't need a lot of space. So what we do is we'll do a soil assessment to determine what's required, and then we'll add amendments to create the correct conditions for life to thrive. Because what we found is once we've got the soil sorted out and it's balanced, and we've got a thriving microbiome, then the trees benefit. Hence, the pocket forest is successful. We're experiencing pocket forests becoming self-sustaining ecosystems in about 2 to 3 years, and that's with a survival rate of 87%. So soil is a key component to the Miyawaki method, and that's the methodology that we based our planting system on. It involves creating ultra-dense pocket forests, using only native species, amending soils so that they are thriving, and then mulching really heavily so that we're retaining as much moisture in the soil as much as possible. And so far, we've planted 241 pocket forests worldwide. We're in 54 different cities. And in fact, the only continent we haven't planted on at the moment is Antarctica. So these nature-based solutions are proving to be excellent at reducing the heat island effect. So in the South Bank, that's London. It's a striking brutalist architecture area, part of London, and it's a proper concrete jungle. Our forest over there is showing a variance of temperature of about 20 degrees lower in the forest than it is on the concrete. They're also incredible as acting as sponges. So because the soil is alive, they absorb the water runoff that we get from the rain that you get in London, as opposed to becoming really dry and hydrophobic and then just allowing water to run over their surface. And the pocket forests are biodiversity hotspots. So we create the perfect environment for wildlife to build habitat, to find food, and to reproduce. In London, we have 30 pocket forests dotted across the city. So that's 100,000 trees that we've planted in the last 4 years. And we like to call it urban acupuncture. So we're depaving London to relieve the pressure on soils, to allow it to breathe, to live again, and create custom soil mixes to improve soil health. We're injecting biodiversity into every quarter of London with these kind of corridors that permeate through the city. So these are ways in which SUGi is participating in restoration of urban habitats. Everything starts in the soil. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Adrian. We would love to hear more about that. So, Nicolas, can you tell us a bit about your experiences with soil in the city?
Absolutely. I'll be very honest to start with this speech because with this soils in the city, I was a bit afraid since at Urbaine, what we do is rainwater management. But thanks to Adrian's intervention and Marc-André's intervention, it was pretty well underlined that water, rainwater as a natural resource, but also as a vital resource, is something essential in the environment, in the development of the biodiversity. So what we do is that we use this very, I'll reuse Marc-André's terms, but dead environment, dead mineral environment in the city to collect water from the sewage network, so before it's actually lost underground. And once we collect this resource and we are able to store it, the materials we use, the technique we use, will actually redistribute the water into the soil. So this not only ensures a continuous watering operation for green plants, for roots, but also for all the biodiversity that is inside of it, but it will maintain its freshness and its natural way of developing itself. The way we work is maybe a bit more with the operations of a city planning, city management, where we work. We are mainly in a French environment, in French territory, but already between the north and the south of the country, we don't have the same environment, we don't have the same biodiversity and the same weather. So all of these are elements that we can take into account, make sure that whatever quantity of water we collect, we're able to redistribute and completely suppress the watering operations for the plants. So this means cost saving for general urban management, for gardeners and so on. But it also means something that is important and that we hear a lot more recently is urban cooling. The fact that our today's infrastructures that are very mineral are suffering from the heat wave effect that was mentioned previously. And everyone agrees that trees, green nature is actually the best and the easiest solution to fight these effects of climate change. So again, in Marc-André's intervention when he spoke about soils not being able to absorb the water that will suffer from droughts and floods, all those are negative aspects of a poorly managed soil. By having the nature reintroduced in our daily lives, not only will better our feeling and the way we behave, but it will also promote this more sustainable, more durable environment for our urban environments. So that's pretty much the way we see it at Urbaine.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Nicolas. So we go to London. Mr. Coban, what are your perspectives on
Really done a
soil?
great job to sell London, thank you. Morning everyone, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be here in ChangeNOW representing London at this incredible conference. My name is Mete Coban, I'm the Deputy Mayor of London for Environment and Energy. Prior to that, I used to be a City Councillor in London for a decade, so I served 3 terms in the east of London. What I want to say, and really just to build on the points that have been made by previous speakers, is for us, the issue of creating more access to green space and actually helping nature flourish across the city in London is an issue of social justice for so many Londoners. I've always said this, I'll be totally frank and honest with you, I'm not a traditional environmentalist. I came to care about this issue because I come from a very deprived part, a poor part of London, where communities like mine who've done the least to cause the impact of the climate and air pollution crisis that we live in today are those who are disproportionately suffering from a lack of access to green space in their neighborhoods or really bad air quality that means that they have stunted lungs forever. And that's a massive social and racial justice issue for lots of Londoners. So the mayor's always been very clear right from the start since he was first elected in 2016 that the issue of tackling the climate crisis is an issue of delivering social justice for our residents. And we know when you talk about the impacts of rainwater, of flooding, all of these sort of important vital topics that we talk about, again, it's disproportionately residents who've done the least to cause the crisis in the first place who are suffering more from it. So we've had an ambitious rollout program across London. London is a very green city, I should say. 51% of our spatial spaces covered by green spaces across the city is quite phenomenal, actually. But we also know that we are grappling with the challenges of climate change, extreme heat. We know we had flash floods in 2021. We also had the hottest temperatures on record. It was the most busiest time on record for the London Fire Brigade since the Second World War in 2021. And so we obviously have a duty to make sure that we're protecting some of our most vulnerable residents. And so there's a number of interventions that we have been making across our city to make sure that we're creating more access to green space, but also we're making sure that we're getting the right types of species of trees. So we've planted 570,000 trees across the city, and a real investment, particularly in our public realm, because we know that we need to make sure that we need to cool the temperatures of our streets and really increase tree canopy in London by 10% over the next 10 years. And that's one of the things that we're currently undertaking at the moment, which is developing the new local nature recovery strategy in London, which is a collaborative piece of work that works across the different municipalities across London, 32 different municipalities that we have. But also it's making sure that we're engaging with the right stakeholders too, and more importantly, Londoners, to really give them a sense of co-design, co-production, and a sense of ownership over the future of their city. So we've been heavily investing, as I say, in the infrastructure of trees, sustainable urban drainage systems across London. We know that we need to make London a much more spun city, but also this also helps our aspiration, the link between the green and blue spaces. We have an ambitious plan to clean London's rivers. In London, we've got 41 of our rivers are currently bad ecological status, and we want to clean our rivers, but we know that it's not just about the intervention that you make in terms of the waterway itself, it's also about the road runoff that you spoke about when it rains. So it's about how do you make sure that you have the green infrastructure alongside cleaning the waterways that can also help support that aspiration too. So we're looking at this holistically, but we're also we're very lucky in London because we've got leading specialists, right from Kew Gardens, for example, an important science-based institution who's helping support us and really understanding, helping support the boroughs and the municipalities and understanding the types of trees, of species and the soil that we need to make sure that we're accelerating on our ambition to make sure that London is more green and resilient. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really wonderful to hear how much London is doing, and also I think very important that you mentioned this social justice perspective, because that is something that we see in many cities of the world. Maybe you would like to reflect on some of the things you've heard from the other speakers, also from Marc-André, just to hear a bit more, also maybe with some examples of your work on soil.
Go ahead, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what we've just heard here from the example of London from my two colleague speakers, this is something reassuring because we work with a lot of big cities that deal with the urban infrastructures or urban development. Today, we notice that there is not one project, even if it's roadwork construction, a bike lane, or even the building of a new building. There is not one project that does not consider natural resources, soil, a landscape, architecture aspect of these projects. Even if it's not always possible because of the financial aspect of a project or because the soil is very polluted. So those are the kind of arguments that happen. We realize that it is a major issue today. So not only the political environment, the scientific environment, but the general public is very aware of all of this. So we know that we are realizing the effects of climate change because we are living them since a few years now. We notice them in our daily lives in summer and in winter, but we are working towards a better planning of all of this. So this is it's very reassuring for me, who I am a lot more in an operational aspect of the project. So hearing this is quite nice. Thank you.
I'd like to touch on something that you mentioned about social injustice, and I'm London-based as well. SUGi is a London-based company, and we've found that we're finding more interest in the work that we do in those boroughs that are less affluent. So East London, Newham Council, Barking and Dagenham Council, that's where we've been doing the majority of our work. And these areas are the areas that are prone to flooding. They have the worst air in London because the prevailing winds in the city come from the west and they go to the east. So all the industry and everything, all the pollution will move over to that side of the city. So it's odd that we're finding that the sides of the city that want these type of interventions are coming from the more impoverished areas as opposed to the more affluent areas. And we've been working with quite a few schools to build our pocket forests, and you'll find as well that there's a vast difference between schools in the more affluent areas and the less affluent areas as far as how much interaction the children have had with wildlife, with planting. A lot of the children in the East will have never planted a tree, never seen earthworms. You know, they're fascinated when the first time they see an earthworm. So there's definitely a huge disparity between the two sides there.
And for sure, I think, you know, one of the things that you touched on, which I think is very right, is in the case of Londoners, I think they're very clear about what their demands are of us as politicians. You know, I'm very lucky that I work for a mayor of London, and I'm not just saying this because I want to keep my job, but a mayor of London who has really put environmental action at the heart of his mayoralty. When he first became the mayor of London in 2016, they said to him, it would take 193 years to bring London's pollution limits within legal limits. And we're now on track to reach that this year through the introduction of the world's largest clean air zone, the ultra-low emission zone. But it's to your point, right? This isn't just, you know, Mete and the mayor sitting in the office in City Hall and thinking these are good ideas to do. Actually, what we've been hearing and what Londoners have been crying out for many, many, many decades is they want to actually see equity, right? They want to see the investment of their neighborhoods. For a lot of Londoners, like where I grew up, for example, in Hackney, which is also in the east of London, I was brought up on an overcrowded estate on social housing. My mum and my dad lived in the living room, me and my brother in one room, and my sister in one room. No access to green space. And the impacts of that on so many working class families is you never have a place where you can sit down and have a family dinner. You have no place where you can go out and play with your friends. The impact that has on your mental well-being, and this is the point which I'm trying to make, is that actually what we are, and the reality is those people also have little choice about, one, where they live, but two, if they don't like where they live, they don't have the choice to say, well, I don't like it, therefore I'm just gonna go off and rent or buy somewhere else. So that's why for us, it's not just about, often politicians get really fascinated by the number of trees you planted or the number of like spatial area you grow, right? Because you want to be able to say, in 4 years' time, I've done X, Y, Z. It's not just about the number. The key thing here is about equity. It's about how do you actually make sure that you green the grey in areas where they've been impoverished and they haven't had the opportunities that other parts of the city has had. So we have a real focus on equity. And one of the things that we're going to be launching as part of London Climate Week this year is the Green Roots Fund, which will be basically a national lottery-style grant for communities. And this will be essentially for communities to be able to apply for grants throughout the whole year. It will be open all year round. And for you to be able to think about encouraging more underserved communities, so women-led, youth-led, Black and global majority groups, to have more access to funding to be able to green their communities.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I was just also thinking about this is about change, the collective action, the community stewardship, and this is a beautiful example, this Green Roots Fund, where everyone can take part and also work on the issues that really matter most to the people who live this experience every day. So maybe as a last round of reflections from you, what do you think can inspire change, especially from that perspective of collective action, the power of the community in a city? Adrian, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that we do quite well is we have a very incredible creative team that actually promotes the work that we do. And nowadays, the way that you do that is through social media. So we've got a fairly strong following on social media, but that actually turns into actual in-person interactions when we hold events, where we do planting events, or we'll do this thing called SUGi walks, where we take small groups around the city to view our plantings and to go into detail, what we do as far as soil amendments and planting various types of trees. And you'll start to get the same, I guess, a very similar attitude towards greening, towards sustainability, towards the environment from these people. And it's a great networking opportunity for everybody to actually come together, to exchange ideas, and to realize opportunities through each other. So it's a really grassroots way of doing it, but we're finding that we're making a lot of connections through other people. Yeah.
Thanks.
Even individually, it is true that when we have projects in the public space, whether if it's during the construction phase or even during the plantation phase, a lot of people, they are curious, they come around, they ask us questions about what we are doing. They see that we try to collect a natural resource that was seen with a very bad eye for so long. Every time you had a puddle or a flood, it was something very negative. Today, the fact that after a rain episode, we can see water is actually quite natural. So even if individually, people in their homes, when they do some gardening, when they want to bring out some plants in our daily lives, they think things a bit differently. It's not only aesthetic. Sometimes it's for urban agriculture purpose. Sometimes it's rethinking the ways we did things before that actually worked very well and that still do. So the message of hope is that for me, what we notice is that the methods, the techniques have always existed. People are aware. Maybe social media is a very strong messenger to promote all this usage and the way of doing things. But the overall result is that it has a very beneficial effect on our daily lives. So whether if it's at home, in our home with our families, or our daily lives where we work, where we have a walk around in the parks, or just generally speaking, the nature can cool down our environment when we are in the summer, just speaking.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess I'll make two very quick points. The first is, which we haven't spoke about, is, of course, we're talking about a lot within cities. I think the other key thing to say is the collaboration and the collective action that cities can take to go working together. And we're very lucky to have a very great partnership with Paris. We are the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is the co-chair of the C40 Cities network, which is even more important now, where we see this whole wider conversation around multilateralism and obviously what's happening around the world. So I think there's something about power of collective action, actually, and how cities can work together to really drive forward this agenda. But ultimately, look, this is all about people, right? This conversation ultimately must never forget that we're talking about people. And for us in London, it's about putting power back into the hands of community. And this is a real opportunity for us to really think about London and cities not just being a place where you live to work, but actually as a place where you live to enjoy, creating thriving neighborhoods. And there's a massive opportunity for here about how we can work with communities to really shape the future of their neighborhoods, give them a sense of ownership of designing their neighborhoods. And it'll be a missed opportunity if we just go in and invest and do loads of great things, but then actually how you do policy, the policy you do is really important, but how you do the policy in so many ways is even more important. And so for us, it's really important that actually working together collectively, right from the start, working together with the community to actually design what we're trying to do in terms of the neighborhoods, and the investment we're making in green spaces is really at the heart of our mission in London.
Thank you so much. We've come to the end of this panel, but really wonderful, all that you've shared in this brief moment of time. Very inspiring.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I have the great honor to invite our last speaker in this session, and that is Masami Charlotte Lavault. Welcome. So welcome, Masami Charlotte Lavault. She is the founder of an organic flower farm here in Paris, Plein. But I think most importantly is the story of her life, which is a story of very inspiring change. And yeah, we're going to try to capture some of that in this moment that we have together. So yeah, maybe you can start by telling us a bit about you and about your journey.
Yes. Do you hear me? Yeah? So hello, everybody, and thank you, Chantal, for introducing me. So my name is Masami Charlotte Lavault. So I am French and Japanese. I was born in Paris, and I've lived all my life in larger cities like Paris, London, Vienna in Austria. And I was really super far from farming when I was born, and I had no family links to farming or even just the rural world. I was always in cities and no connection to this at all. And I studied and started to work as an industrial designer, which I hated because I was spending my life away behind the computer screen. I was sitting all day. I was sad, probably depressed, and very angry at what actually the greater society is expecting from young people. A successful life is a life in an office, more or less, which is actually not true. And so very, very suddenly, after suffering in London, I decided to leave the city and go work on farms with absolutely no knowledge of all this. And it was the best idea I've ever had, really. So I left all my jobs, all my industrial design jobs, and I went on a farm in Morocco. It was amazing. It was a biodynamic farm, and I arrived there in spring, and it was amazing because I saw all the orange trees blooming, which was incredible. And then I really started a full year, even more, of traveling and working on farms, and mostly on biodynamic farms, only organic farms, and on a very interesting and specific farm. So I went to Morocco and then to a farm in the UK and then worked in farms in Japan. And that farm in Japan was very transformative for me because we were producing vegetables and tropical fruits, but also raising microorganisms as cattle. And so I learned there how to use the power of microorganisms for farming. And also on biodynamic farms, I don't know if you're very familiar with biodynamics, but it's a very European way, very local way, to harness also the power of fermented solutions, fermented plant matter, actually, and to use the bounty of microorganisms that appear in those fermented solutions for the soil. So without knowing, I actually got like the greatest education ever on farming with microorganisms just by spending time on those farms. And so I decided to go back to the city because it's where I was born and it's where I know how to live. To go back to the city, find land, and create my own farm. And I was super convinced that it would be easy and that Paris would be the best place for it. And it was not easy, but Paris is actually a great place for that. So I ended up finding, after years and years and years, like it's a super short version of the story, but after years of searching, I finally found a small plot of land in Paris, in inner city Paris. So it's in Belleville, which translates to beautiful city, which is cute, but it's in Belleville, which is in the northeastern quarter of Paris, and it's very small. It's only 1,200 square meters, which is tiny for a farm, but more than enough for a single person, a single farmer. And so I've opened my first farm 10 years ago. So that's Plein, as Chantal said, and I'm only producing organic cut flowers, which is very beautiful. I mean, it's like in a children's book. I sow seeds, I just grow the flowers, and then I cut them and I sell them. And it's a very simple life. It's very hard because it's farming, but it's extremely satisfying to be able to create a little bit of beauty from that urban plot. So yeah, and in the meantime, so it's been 10 years now, but I've run other farms. I had other farms on the countryside, but really like building on the skills that I got to hone on the Parisian farm. So for me, what's my great pride, I think, is to be really a city girl with absolutely no connection to this, and being able, with work and motivation and a great deal of luck, to change my life and become what I think is the coolest job on earth, like to become a farmer. And everything is possible because really I had no money, no land, no experience, nothing, and it's existing now. So. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing your story. And yeah, I think it's also really interesting that this is in the city, in the heart of this very dense urban land. How do you see that link between the soil, what you grow, but also us as human beings and health? You mentioned microorganisms.
Well, the soil that I work on is horrible. It's really polluted, actually. I got it from, I rent it from the city of Paris. My rent is very low because really the soil is bad. And it was too bad for it to be used for edibles. So I think my great luck was to be a non-edible product farmer, because I really only grow cut flowers, and so no one is really supposed to eat them. So that was my chance really to be able to get land in the city. So for me, pollution was a blessing, but obviously it's just, pollution at large is not a blessing. And I've seen how life on the farm has slowly come back and really evolved. And the lab analysis of my soil at the beginning, before I started farming, were really terrible, high pollution, as Marc-André said, it's heavy metals, a lot of heavy metals. And again, because I'm in the eastern part of Paris, northeastern part of Paris, so it's where the industry has always been. And so my pollution is really old. It's probably working site pollution from the 1860s. It's really old. So that's what I'm starting with. And 7 years later, I made new soil analysis, and the soil has a little improved a bit. So I'm not saying that I'm going to depollute the plot. This is not going to happen. This is way too long, and this is not compatible with my activity. But by using organic methods and by caring for the soil, because I never touch the soil ever, I'm never tilling, I'm never disturbing soil life, I'm always only using fermented potions really to improve the soil life. The results came back really a bit more positive, and what has happened is just that the pollution has diluted in the bottom layers of the soil, but the whole upper layer, where the plants grow and where most of the insect life lives, has gotten better. So I'm really proud of this. It's really a menial positive results, but I find that this is what urban farms have the power to do. And as regarding what's the connection with human health and human well-being, I can't, I'm not growing edibles, so I can't really tell you about the nutritional value of my products and blah blah. But what I can say, it's a bit more naive, maybe a bit more cutesy. But I take the tube to go to the farm, and then I enter the farm, and I am surrounded with hundred thousands of plants, and around them there are 100,000s of insects, and around the insects there are hundreds of birds and small animals, and it's all in Paris. And when it's spring or summer, and when the farm is really living and boasting life, it's crazy, the energy that you get from it. And to be able to spend the whole day, every day, in that environment whilst being in Paris, I think is the greatest luxury ever. And I am so proud and happy when I'm able to share that feeling of being surrounded by plants and animals in the city with other citizens. When I'm able to open the door of the farm and welcome people. This is not always easy for me, because this is like opening the door of your office. Sometimes it's very disturbing, you can't work. So it's the same with the door of my farm. It's very difficult for me to open it to the wider public at all times, because I need to work. But what's been really transformative for me is that the city of Paris has funded a way for me to open to the public for free, and without me losing time and money, And so that's really important for cities, and if there are any city planners here, that if you want to foster that farming activity in cities, you also need to foster a way for farmers to live. And only selling our products is not enough, because if you want us to open the space for the public, that's another activity. Like, you would never ask a farmer on the countryside to open his or her farm to the public. But in cities, it's our duty, I think, as farmers, to share the beauty of that life, the beauty of that simple farming life in the city. But the time that it needs to be somehow retributed for us. And so that's really the role of the city or other sponsors. Like, for a long time, the city of Paris was not able to fund this. So I tried to knock on other doors, and my biggest helper is actually LVMH. So I've been working with Kenzo, which is a brand that belongs to the group LVMH, and I am the face of one of their perfumes, which has absolutely nothing to do with my daily life, but actually it's a cute perfume. It's called Flower, and so it's very linked to my activity. But the greatest part of that partnership is not that I have my face on big posters in the tube, but it's more that they actually really help me financially to open the farm to the wider public. And they've also helped me launching my second farm, which is 50 kilometers away from Paris, which also belongs to the city of Paris. But it's much bigger. It's like 50 times bigger than what I run in Paris. But I'm still alone, so it's a bit intense. But I think creating those spaces where Parisians can escape the city a bit and discover what farming is and what farming represents is probably for me, it's one of the biggest transformative strategies that we could invent for transition. And really, I'm so convinced that farming is the best job in the world. Like, if you've never tried, you should try it. It's so satisfying, and I feel I would never go back.
Yeah, it's really wonderful indeed to have you here, because you are on the farm, as you say, every day, and living that life, being close to the plants and nature. So coming from that background in industrial design and seeing what's happening in the world and in many of our cities, how do you think we can inspire each other more and bring a connection to these different worlds and that collective spirit of
But
making
really,
change?
it's just getting to know each other. Like when I was not a farmer yet, I was very afraid of the rural world because I never went on vacation on the countryside in France. Like I had no idea. I was really a city kid, and I was super afraid of it. Like I didn't know any plants, and I thought the people were scary as well. Like it was very stupid actually, but it's probably like somehow the way that a lot of people feel like they don't know the world, the natural world, and they're a bit afraid of it. And I think creating bridges like that, like for me really running a farm in the city and running a farm in the countryside and having both is paradise. Because I get to mix like all the people from the countryside with the people from the city, and I get to, like me myself, I can like, change lifestyle instantly, which is nice. But I think communicating and getting to know this world is great, and a lot of it happens, like Adrian said, through social media. I don't really like Instagram, but it's been actually very helpful for people just to get to know the farm and getting to know, just knowing that it exists in Paris. And what's very moving for me is that a lot of people who've discovered the farm on Instagram have ended up like going to a sale at the farm or a visit at the farm, and slowly they've started changing their own life. And I get like several dozens actually of people who've written me and told me, hey, after I saw your farm, I decided to change jobs and I run a farm now. And so it's really, and it's just within 10 years. So I would never have believed when I started that it would inspire other people, but it actually did, and I find it really, it makes me full of hope. So yeah, and so if ever you're interested in farming, really, like you should go to farms and have a look at it for yourself.
Thanks so much, Masami, Charlotte. I think you have inspired many of us today, and I hope you'll stay a little bit longer at ChangeNOW before you go back to the farm, so that maybe that maybe others can talk to you a bit more. But thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Chantal.
So you can stay, I think. With this, we're closing the session, actually. And I would really like to thank you and all the speakers who made their great contributions, and to all of you for your attention, for being there. Have a great day.